Good evening, one and all. My name's James Sims, and I'm the creator of mypeexam.org. And thank you so much for joining me, especially as it's Monday evening. Everyone's busy. I really do appreciate your time. So look, I've put an agenda up on the screen here, and hopefully you can see this nice and clearly. We're going to go through effectively 8 items this evening. We've got 45 minutes available to us, but we'll probably be in the region of 30 to 35, that sort of area. And we're going to group some of these items together. So certainly my first job this evening is going to talk to you about how the student services work on mypeexam.org. We're then going to have a look at the teacher stuff all in together so we can see how teachers can benefit from using mypeexam.org. And then we're going to talk about a couple of additional features. I'm going to offer you a voucher code for the website later on in the session, and we're going to finish off with some next steps and what you would need to do to get activated. But look, before we do any of that, I mentioned to you a moment ago that it's a Monday night and probably we should be with our families and resting, if truth be told. But, you know, we're committed and we're teachers and we want to do a good job. So look, I want to remind people why we do this job. This is my daughter Georgina with a garlic on her head in some rural village in France. This is myself with my other daughter Anna, I think in a restaurant in Spain. This is the three of us together on a boat, and this is me eating out of a Tupperware with my hairy shoulders on display in Asturias in northern Spain after a day of canoeing. So look, I just want us all to remember that when we go through these sessions, giving extra time Monday nights, for example, we're doing it because it provides us sort of that sense of achievement and that career that we want to enable us to have a fantastic life at home with the people that we care about. So let's make sure that we keep that kind of value system present all time. So look, first of all, let's talk about the student account. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to briefly come into the webinar room, say hello to everybody, because I will need to do that just for a second. Hello, my name is, as I said before, James. I've got this outrageous shirt on. I'm very proud of this shirt. Actually, it's actually a homemade shirt, just in case you're wondering what on earth is he wearing. But what we're going to do here is we're going to go on immediately to look at the student account. So let's do that now. I'm just going to share my entire screen with you. The screen will go briefly crazy, and then you will see the website. So let's have a look at that right now. So hopefully what you can see is you can see mypeexam.org, and I'm logged in as user Darth Vader, so a bit of a dodgy character, but nevertheless he's one of my students, or in this case it's me. I'm Darth Vader, and I'm going to show you how Darth might go about using the website to his benefit. So I guess the first things to say are that the site personalizes to the individual student. If they were to drag down, look, they've got all their profile information which they can update and change whenever they need to. But certainly one of the things we want the students to get familiar with is that if they click on this My Progress button, it takes them straight down to the courses they are enrolled for. In this case, I'm enrolled for A2P with OCR, exercise physiology. And if I click on here, all of my data that I have produced from taking part in lessons is here. We can see that I'm 26% complete on the actual course itself. And these are the scores that are contributing, at least partially, towards that completion. So that's really important. If I just drag you back up, you realize that's actually part of the homepage itself, and that facility, that My Progress tracking system is in there. So we might look straight away and say, look, we've got a few crosses here, ATP and energy, ATP and energy, ATP and energy, but then the student, Darth here, actually manages to get this 6 in a row, which I'll talk to you about in a bit more detail in a moment. Now, we might say that's a really positive profile. This student has persisted and achieved the required ticked 6 in a row, 100% standard. And we know when they did it, or at least they know when they did it. I'll show you how the teacher will know when they did it in a few moments' time. We see with the lactic acid system again, 2 attempts and passed. The aerobic system, 2 attempts and passed. The ATP-PC system, attempted and passed the very first time it was attempted. So all that's good stuff. So let's have a look at the actual course. So we can click into OCR A2P, exercise physiology, and this student, Darth Vader, is enrolled for this course. And look, they've managed to pass the first lesson, the second, the third. They've managed to skip over the assignment, which I'm actually not going to look at in this video. They've managed to pass the aerobic system, and the next one they need to look at is the energy continuum. So let's see if we can do that now. So how does this work? The student goes into their next lesson, and what do they get? Well, look, they get a little bit of bump here, which introduces the lesson to them. And from that point then, they've got a self-paced learning video tutorial which they can play and take notes from at their own rhythm. So look, I don't think we're going to get any sound through here, but you know, you can get the idea that this is going in live for the student. Things are being put in on the video for the student with commentary, with description. This is literally me teaching this material, as you'll see in a few moments' time. I do it on the blackboard in this session as well. And the student, of course, can make their way all the way through this lecture taking notes, pausing, going back whenever they need to, seeing the graph being put in live, and all those things. So the student can take that once, they can take it 3 times, they can revisit it after 6 months if they want to, they can take that lesson whenever they need to. Once they feel they've really mastered that thing, they can come down to this quiz here, which is called the Energy Continuum Quiz. And it says here, you must score 6 consecutive answers to pass this quiz. Good luck. So let's actually have a go at this. Let's start this quiz. We have to get 6 perfect answers in a row. So question 1, match up the examples of sporting moments provided with the energy system which would be predominant in that moment. So a goalkeeper diving to save the ball in field hockey, well, I'm going to say that's the PC system, so I'm going to put that in there. A timeout during a handball match, well, that's definitely aerobic, so I'm going to put that in there. A 10,000 meter runner covering the last 400 meters of the race in 51 seconds, well, that's going to be powered by the lactic acid system, even though the remainder of the race is going to be largely aerobic. That specific moment is lactic acid system. We get our marking done automatically for us and we move on. Next question, examine the image, a bit of graph analysis here. Match up the curves with the relevant energy system. So the pink curve, that's definitely the ATP-PC. We've now got the yellow curve, well, that one is the lactic acid system. And the green curve is the aerobic system. So I hope you're realizing there that the student is analyzing the graph, and what they should be doing here is they should be really looking at features which allow them to match this up, check their answer, get their feedback, and they move on. Now we happen to get lots of matching questions. They're not all matches, I should say. Match up the description provided with the relevant energy system. A basketball team playing a full court press, lactic acid. A weightlifter taking their 7th lift of the competition. A bit of a trick question that. It's still the PC system because they've had enough time to recover. Jogging back into position after scoring a try in rugby. That recovery is being done aerobically. Next, we keep going. This one, complete the gap fill exercise to accurately define the concept of energy continuum. And look, we've got these words to help us. And it's the relative contribution of all 3 energy systems. The predominant system is based upon intensity and duration. So we check that. Hopefully my spelling has not caused many problems, but we check that. We move on. So here we go again. Examine the image below of the energy continuum graph. Complete the statements below to provide accurate descriptions of the features from the energy continuum graph. So in the gaps below, add either the letter A or the letter B according to the evidence in the graph. At approximately 10 seconds, well, I believe that is A, this point here. At approximately 180 seconds, I think that's point B. The point referred to as the anaerobic threshold. The anaerobic threshold. Well, I believe again that is point B. It's the threshold where the aerobic system takes over from the anaerobic lactic acid system, and the point at which the lactic acid system becomes predominant is point A. Check those answers. We move on. One more matchup to do is our last question. The energy yield. So the lactic acid is 1 to 2. 2 ATP for every glycogen. The aerobic system is up to 38 ATP for every glycogen, and the ATP-PC system is for every phosphocreatine, we get 1 ATP. We check, we finish our quiz, and then our results are recorded for us. Look, so we've scored an average, we've scored 100% here, and I can see the leaderboard. Look, Darth Vader's gone straight into the top, like the student here, BPC Fotheringham, and today has done really, really well there, look, getting 5 out of 6 and then upskilling to 6 out of 6. And Darth Vader here goes in as the top person because it's the most recent. I then go to view questions. This might be interesting for me, especially if I've got questions wrong. I can look at all the questions I have taken and I can analyze what I got. I can take notes. I've got time to do that. But certainly what I want to do is I want to click this button, click here to continue. Now, if we restart the quiz will be different the next time around. There's a bank of questions there, which means that the quiz is different every time. But congratulations, now move on to the next lesson, click here to continue. And of course, what the system's now going to do is push me on to recovery, which is the next lesson. Now then, if we go back to exercise physiology for Darth Vader, what we will now see is that the student against the energy continuum look has got the green tick because they get 6 in a row. And again, if they go back to the home page and they go down to my progress, again, we've now got a situation where we've now made 33% completion and energy continuum has been ticked off. Now, if I want to go back to energy continuum, I can click in there and it will take me back into that quiz if I ever want to do that again because I'm revising or something along those lines. So let me just come back into the webinar room ever so briefly. So for me, one of the really important things here is to talk about the concept of mastery. You notice there that concept of 6 in a row. That's important because in this model where the student has got flexibility of access to the lecture, they can repeat the lecture, they can go back, they can go forward, they can have a go at the quiz as many times as they want to, but the standard remains at 6 perfect answers in a row. And if they get like a multiple choice question, there's 3 correct answers in that multiple choice. If they only get 2 of them right, or they try and select 4 of them, the answer's wrong, and they have to repeat. They have to repeat. So it's 6 perfect answers in a row. Nothing less will do. Now, that is only possible in a variable seat time model. You can't do that if, for example, you know, the dominant experience in the classroom is lots of delivery of lectures, because it doesn't leave time for that variability. Also, the students can't go back to the lecture itself. So on that basis, the student doesn't have the resources necessarily to be able to aim for all students achieving mastery. All right, so that I think is really important. So let me just share my screen with you again, and we'll go back to our canvas here. So look, we, I think, have done a pretty good job of saying, look, that's roughly what it's like if you are a student. That's the experience you're going to get. You're going to get video tutorials. You're going to get online quizzes. There's assignments built in which you can upload to the site, and that is really good. You can also monitor your own progress and return to lectures whenever you need. So this student account hopefully is a really rich experience. What then does the teacher account look like, and how is it different? Again, let's have a look at that now. Let's just come back into the webinar room ever so briefly. And what I'm going to do now is, again, I'm going to share my full screen with you. Just bear with me a second. And then we're going to go back to the website. So here we go. So what we're going to do is we're going to log out as Darth Vader. Get rid of Darth, who's just got a student account. Nothing wrong with that, of course, but we're interested in looking at teacher accounts now. So I'm now going to log in as James Anthony Sims. That happens to be my rather questionable name, but we have got do our little maths question 67. I hope I got that right. And what we're going to do now is, again, the site's going to personalize to me in particular. Notice again, I still have a my progress button. Why would we have that if we are the teacher? It's an important point. If I click on this, the teacher account now, you see it has access to live shows and webinar recordings using mypexam.org, group work, questioning technique, learning concepts. Now, for example, on this group work, we can click into this course. Now, I haven't actually taken, this profile hasn't taken any of these lectures as yet, but we could want to take a group work activity and learn it as a form of teacher CPD, and it works the same way. A little bit of detail, and then we come in here, and then the video tutorial literally shows us how to set up our classroom and how to actually go about delivering a session with this structure, which is called Pass the Buck. Now, to put this into context, there's about 100 of these sessions built into the website for teachers to upskill themselves with, okay? So they are self-paced learning models. Sometimes I say it's like 5 years worth of CPD on tap, on demand, and they can be accessed at any time whenever the teacher feels the need to go through some kind of development. And again, they're accessible here through the teacher support part of the site. So if I just click into here, you can see these courses: question techniques, group work, classroom structures, assessment and data, learning concepts using mypexam.org. And then we've got this one, live shows and webinar recordings, where this recording will go, for example, later on, so people can review this whenever they need to. So hopefully that's really resourceful for teachers. But let's go back to the home page. You may have noticed that there's a black bar up at the top here that was not there for Darth Vader. This is because this is your teacher dashboard. So for example, if I click in here and I click onto dashboard, I go into a very, very simple environment, not too much detail. It looks very Spartan, very simple, but straight away I've got 3 buttons here which become very resourceful for me. Let's look at activity stream in the middle first of all. Notice this first real-time entry into my activity stream. I can see that Darth Vader has taken the quiz on energy continuum and he's passed that 6 out of 6. Now imagine yourself, you're in a lesson and that actually happens in your lesson. You have a scenario where you've set students some tutorials, you've set some quizzes, and you're working on a one-to-one with some of the students with your device on, with this page open. You can see these scores coming in as they happen. You can also monitor the timing of these scores, and that therefore becomes really useful for you. I'm also going to look at this overview here. Now, we're interested in the OCR A2 PE course. Now, I've got loads of courses listed in here because it's me, but we can click on this here, and I can go down and I can look at, I'm only going to show you the top 3 users. I can look at the users in my group and I can say, okay, look, I have got a scenario here where I can actually see the progress that my students are making. But this is a very simple format. We want more detail in this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to export this user info and I'm going to open it I just downloaded a simple CSV file, which is going to come up here. Now I'm just going to copy out the top 3 students, because the others, all I'm doing there, by the way, is selecting all that data and copying it. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of that now. And what I'm going to open, oh, that's the wrong one. What I'm going to open is this document here, which looks extremely simple. It's called the OCR A2PE Exercise Physiology Mastery Tracker. And it looks like a very simple format here. It doesn't really show us a lot of detail. But if I now go into here, put my cursor into the top there, paste that information in, and then go back to this completed steps button, all of a sudden something very interesting happens. I can look across Luke Skywalker, Darth Vader, Princess Leia's profile there, and I can see column by column by column which topic areas they have mastered and which ones they haven't. So we would have a concern here for Luke Skywalker, who has not mastered this lesson on ATP and energy, whereas Darth Vader and Princess Leia have. Now, one thing we could do is we could say, okay, Princess Leia, or okay, Darth Vader, can you have a work with Luke Skywalker and see if you can upskill him ready to take this assessment? Now, that's a good line of attack. If it doesn't work, then maybe that's where the one-to-one or other sort of intervention steps come in. We might look at our whole group and say, okay, we've got to do this assignment. That really needs to come up next for us. Let's get on with that. We might have a concern over Luke Skywalker here because he hasn't mastered that aerobic system. So for me as the teacher, I'm thinking, right, where am I going to use my teacher time most resourcefully? Well, it might be in specifically that area, and then developing all students onto the next topic area. All right, so that in itself is really useful. Let's go back to the website. Go back up to here. Now what I can do as well is I can click on this little dashboard here, go to group administration. All right, again, it's very simple. I've got 2 groups in here, example group and an actual live group, which is a tracking group I'm managing myself. And what I can do is I can just list the users in the example group, and we know who they are already: Luke Skywalker, Darth Vader, Princess Leia. Now I can send them a message from within the site. I can say complete your homework by whenever it happens to be. You know, I can submit that to those people. But also what I can do is I can say, okay, I'm a bit worried about Luke Skywalker because of what we've just seen on the tracker. We can go into Luke Skywalker's report and we can see specifically what results he is generating, but it's not enough. For me, it's not enough information. I want more information. So while we get this chronological list, which is kind of handy, you can see how that might equip something like a one-to-one conversation, we want more. And this is how we get it. If we go back to group administration now, let me export the results for the example group. Again, I get another little download here, quizzes 12, this one's called. I open it, and it's going to produce a whole raft of what looks like tons and tons of data there. All I'm going to do is select it, copy it. I'm going to come back to my mastery tracker. I'm going to go to quizzes and do exactly the same thing, paste it in there. Now look what this does to quiz activity. All of a sudden, I've got a ton of information in here about how my students are performing. So for example, if I had set a homework as energy continuum, lesson and quiz, and it has to be completed, I might just want to have a look at that. Well, I can already see that Darth Vader and Princess Leia mastered it first go. Luke has not attempted it. That's a concern. Now, bear in mind, you can do this in real time. You could know before the lesson that Luke had not completed this the day before, for example, and that's where your that's where your interventions. It could be email home, message to parents, ring the student, catch the student on the way out of school at the end of the last lesson, for example. All those interventions might work. We might say, okay, I've got some worry about Luke Skywalker now, so I want to now specifically focus in on Luke Skywalker and see what's going on. Now then, we see that he hasn't tried that energy continuum lesson. And we might want to look at what is the profile on this ATP and energy, what actually happened with that ATP and energy quiz. So we can select there. We've got Luke Skywalker. We've got the quiz attempted 4 times. And look, what we can do here is we can even put it into chronological order. So we can put it into that order. So we can see that, right, Luke had a go at it and got 67%, then 84%, then 67%, and then finally, a few weeks later, managed to master that content. Okay, so you've got all sorts of tools here to allow you to analyze the data and think about this across a whole cohort of students. Think about this across a whole GCSE cohort, this information being there. You can have a really clear picture of who is engaging with these facilities and who is not, and perhaps where your areas of concern. And if you start to correlate those with classroom experience, with the experience you're getting with their extended writing, with end of unit tests, for example, with their practical marks, you start to get a really complete picture about how students are actually performing. Finally, let's just go back to the website as a teacher now. It's really important this. The other thing I wanted to say to you as well is that if you are going to manage your groups on the website, you also get access to the course that the students themselves are going to have access to. So in this case, exercise physiology for A2PE. Now, why would we need that? Well, of course, the teachers need to know what's coming up. They need to plan lessons. The tutorials themselves might be good for the teachers themselves, and so on and so on and so on. So on that basis, this is a really resourceful way of teachers managing student data and student interactions on the site. All right, let me come back into the webinar room. So what I was going to say, if there's any colleagues out there who do want to post a question in the chat, there is a chat that's enabled. Feel very free to post a comment in there. Someone's got to do it first, so do feel free to make it you. Don't be worried about asking questions that you worry might be sort of quite obvious. Nothing is too trivial, so do genuinely feel free to ask some questions in there. For me, that mastery standard is really important. You know, for a long time I've been delivering courses, delivering material, and now I see my teacher job very differently. I see my teacher job as using brilliant resources and then facilitating within the learning process with learners, and it's a much more enjoyable form of teaching as well. But the only thing I ever target with students is a mastery standard. Now, we're seeing a mastery standard with like online quizzes and lectures and that sort of thing. That mastery standard is also then mirrored when it comes to extended writing. The only level that's accepted is full marks answers, and it's done as many times as needed to get to that standard. Students move on when they've mastered, when they've mastered, when they've mastered. A lot of people get worried about that because they say there might not be enough time. Actually, almost the opposite happens. It gets to a point where students become so familiar with the expectation to achieve mastery that they just put in the behaviors that they need to achieve to go about that mastery standard. And of course, what that means is that when they go on to the next topic, they're far more ready for that next topic, and therefore it actually becomes a very consolidating experience to master things in the early stages. So think about it in the opposite. If you do topic one and there's like a massive hole in topic one because it's not been built on a mastery basis, and then you try and build something on top of it, it's going to collapse and break because there's a weakness within that structure. Okay, I'm going to go back to the black screen ever so briefly. Where are we? Here we go. So I'm going to go back to the black screen here ever so briefly. So look, what have we done there? We've said that we understand how the group tracking and the downloads work. We understand the mastery tracker now and how that works, that Excel mastery tracker that we had a look at. We've had a look at the teacher support. That's the stuff where you've got those 100 tutorials for upskilling the teacher's knowledge through self-paced tutorials that the teacher can take, and therefore we've got an excellent understanding of the teacher account. Look, the voucher code, which is really important here, there's a code, I'll just write it in here for you. It's called Web25 off, and it's a £25 discount on an order. The only thing that you need to be aware of is it's an order over £200 and upwards. So that's the only thing to bear in mind. But if you are interested in signing up for this, then you by all means can use that Web25 off voucher and try this in signing up to the site. So there we go. Now then, best practice. There's a couple of things I want to mention that I think are really important when considering this kind of consideration. The first thing is that probably the most typical experience or the typical structural phenomenon that we have in education today is we have what's called a fixed seat time model. And that is to say that students, generally speaking, and there are loads of exceptions to this, of course, but students, generally speaking, they move in a one-pace-fits-all model. And what we try to do is we bolt on some differentiation to try and make that personalized for the student. And for me, by the way, I'm not criticizing differentiation. For me, differentiating teachers are really the elite teachers in our industry. Those are the people that really put unbelievable time and effort into personalizing learning. But my question is this, that if when people differentiate in that way, that is in spite of the model, not because of the model. And one of the things that the fixed seat time model does, and you can literally count up the access that a student gets to lectures, to task sheets, you can count up the time that they get exposure. Well, without question, that will lead to a variable achievement rate. And you might say, well, of course it does, James. Students are always going to have a variable achievement rate. Well, actually, that's not the case. If we change this fixed seat time model to a variable seat time model where students spend the time they need on the topics and the concepts they need to actually improve, we can change the variable achievement rate to a fixed achievement rate. And we would tend to fix that achievement rate at a level of mastery. Now, that's not me saying to you that every student guaranteed is going to get an A star if they use my website. I am not qualified to tell you that. I don't believe that. That is not my point. But what I can tell you is you can get every student mastering topic 1, and you can get every student without exception mastering topic 2. And it will take you no longer, or it certainly will not mean you don't finish the course. So the thing I would say is this, that we have this traditional idea that topic 1 is delivered to students in week 1, topic 2 is delivered to students in week 3, topic 3 is delivered to students in week 3. This is a delivery model of education. It has a number of consequences. One of them is that the ownership of the learning is with the teacher. Another aspect of it is that it really develops, not always, but very frequently, it develops superficial knowledge. So if you've ever had the experience where you've taught something to a group of students and the next week you're expecting them to have retained tons of that information and they just sort of let you down because they don't remember it, that's because their knowledge is superficial. Not there's anything wrong with them or they've had something funny in their water. It's because that delivery model has not allowed the engagement with the material at a variable pace that the student needs to actually master that thing. So I'm going to come back to the webinar room here, and I realize a couple of things that I've said might feel a little bit controversial to some people. And look, that traditional model that, you know, we've all worked in, I've worked in it one hell of a lot myself. I've worked in an unbelievable amount personally. That is as effective as that traditional model always has been. So we can't be surprised if, for example, if we do the same processes to large numbers of students, all of which have got different starting points, we shouldn't be surprised that they achieve a different level of outcome by the end of it. It's actually and ultimately an inevitability. My computer's going a little crazy here, so I'm just going to disconnect my tablet just for a moment. So that mastery model to me is a fundamental aspect of what we should be trying to achieve in education, a fundamental aspect. Now, I'm not saying that my system's perfect or it is a silver bullet and solve all your problems, but it can be part of a structure and part of an offer to students which could be really resourceful for them. All right, let's get to some practicalities. How are you actually going to go about achieving this? Let me just share my screen with you again. Again, screen's going to go a little bit crazy just for a moment. Let me just share this with you. So if we go back to the website a second, if we look at how this works for pricing, teachers out there, you can have your students just sign up as individual on this site. If they want to just sign up and use it themselves, you can do that. GCSE courses cost £25 for a year. AS and A2 components, and there are 3 obviously for each student in each year group. They're £15, but you get a third one free if you sign up for all 3. So £30 for an AS or an A level effectively. Groups are interesting because groups, first of all, if you sign up students, the price comes down. So the more students you have, the price comes down, makes it more cost effective. And that's the case at GCSE and AS and A2. But it's also, this is where the tracking comes in. So the tracking is charged at £50 per teacher, or it's free if you spend over £350. The same with the teacher support. The teacher support is £50 per year per teacher, or free when you spend over £350. Now, the real power of this website comes when you get the whole department involved in this. Now, think about having all the GCSE, AS, A2 groups. And within this model, you can have any number of students, any structure of groups, any number of teachers, the whole tracking suite, and all of the teacher support for your entire department. And that costs £650 per year, or at the moment it's discounted by 15%. I think which makes it 55250 if I remember rightly. And of course, you guys have got that webinar voucher to knock that £25 off as well. So it comes, you know, brings it down to 527, I think it is anyway. So it's a big number, but if you've got tens and tens and tens and tens of GCSE students, all of a sudden it comes down to £5, £3 per head. Now, if you're up at that sort of number, you should seriously consider this is a possibility for you. You know, think about that for a second. You're going from students being able to access their lectures and some of their tasks once only within the classroom model to whenever they need it within this model, including in the classroom if that's what they want to do. And you've got devices which enable that. So for me, it's a very resourceful thing. And I hope it might prove relevant to people. So look, that's sort of the site in a nutshell, what it does. I'm not going to show the assignment management process within this evening, although just bear in mind that there are extended writing assignments built into all of the courses, GCSE, AS and A2. And what students do is they look at the assignment, they type their answer into a Word or equivalent document, and then they upload it to the site, and then the teacher manages the marking of that document, which then arrives in their dashboard. We saw briefly that tab earlier on. So you can get a fuller experience from that kind of facility as well, and the teacher is the one that marks whether that content has been mastered or not. And of course there can be numerous resubmissions within that method also. So look, that's the site, what it does. If you're interested in getting involved with it, you can of course make an inquiry direct on the site, which is what I just showed you. I've also put my direct email into the website, into the chat there, so do pick up my email on the chat there if that is resourceful for you and you'd like to get in touch. Now look, I'm going to sort of finish off fairly imminently, but I think what I would like people maybe to realize with what I'm trying to do is that while what I do is a business, what I do is an enterprise, for want of a better term, ultimately what I'm trying to be is sort of activistic and challenge the dominant learning model which is existing in schools. And that's not to say that everything in schools is bad. I know beautiful, beautiful people who work in schools and do a magnificent job, work unbelievably hard, but we should be able to make that job a little bit easier. Now look, if we take aspects of rote learning, facts, figures, dates, remembering formulae, those sort of things, we can automate those processes so we're not all repeating the same jobs as the same school down the road and the next one, and the next one, and the next one. And therefore we can really use technology that's automating those rote aspects of the education process, and we can actually allow that to humanize the classroom. So what would the teacher be doing when using this sort of system? Well, first of all, they'd be upskilling with those 100 teacher tutorials that are in the site, but more importantly, the teacher would have all of their time for human interaction in the classroom, for asking brilliant questions, for provoking learners, for setting projects, to listening to students. What a luxury that must seem to many people, listening to students who talk to us and tell us about their inspiration, their passions, their interests, maybe even their excuses. But that opportunity to spend time with learners, to listen to them, to talk to them, to interact with them, to inspire them, that is the highest level of teaching that we can aspire to. And if we actually enable teachers with a structure like this to be able to do more of that kind of work, then we're far more likely to get far more positive outcomes. All right, that's me, my model I'll go over. So I hope that's balanced and fair. I really appreciate you attending, especially on a Monday evening. Everyone's got tons of stuff to do, I do. So thank you very deeply that you come and share time with me doing these sessions. I really enjoy doing them. I thank you for being part of it, and I wish you a very, very pleasant evening. Have a good one.